This Q&A is going to probably be most pertinent to those who have been watching this interplanetary psyop since 2017 or before, but it will also help those who are just waking up have a better understanding of what's been going on and where we are likely headed. It's for all of those who have heard that medbeds were going to be released numerous times and it hasn't happened. It's for those of you who have heard about Nasara Gasara and have been anxiously awaiting a solution to your rapidly climbing debt. It's for all of you that have been waiting for JFK Jr. to show up standing next to Trump at the White House. It's for all of you that have eaten so much GMO popcorn laden with canola oil that you've aged 20 years and 8. It's for all of you who realize that it's not going to happen as quickly as we have been led to believe. That doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. It just means that it may not happen as soon as we hope, or perhaps need. This video was inspired by @EdwinLee4262, who has clearly been watching this movie a long time. He brought up some very good questions about various things that we were told. Many were Q posts and intel that was dangled in front of us, which to date haven't happened. So let's take a look at this question by @EdwinLee4262 that I think a lot of you are wondering about also. I know I am.
Why are they holding up the release of the medbeds coming on Liberation Day? Would you happen to know what happened to the rods of God dropping on 34 satanic sites? Wasn't that supposed to take out a big dam in China and wipe out a major part of Bitcoin mining? Now Bitcoin is part of our treasury reserves.
I think a lot of interpretations that we heard early on were way off base. I was hoping that Liberation Day would be the $5,000 from the Doge savings, but sadly it wasn't. In my mind, the Liberation Day thing was a letdown, but I support his ability to cleanse this world, with help of course. We've always heard about markers that would be met and how the program is event-driven. However, it's my belief that there is some marker regarding the deep state that must be met before the medbeds will be released to us. Ardana said that the corporate structures must be destroyed first. The video of this message will be linked at the end. Also, the space station as an alternate administration location will not be completed until at least the end of November 2025. That video will also be linked at the end. We were told that the rods of gods were some sort of direct energy weapon with tungsten rods which were dropped from orbit to hit with explosive force without the use of nuclear weapons. I've seen illustrations and the weapon is real. Project Thor is a kinetic bombardment system, first envisioned by Jerry Pournelle in the 1950s while he worked at Boeing as an operations researcher. The plan was to drop massive tungsten rods, described as 20 feet long, 1 foot wide, weighing about 24,000 pounds, from orbit to strike targets on Earth. These rods would hit at hypersonic speeds, up to Mach 10 or 7,600 miles per hour, delivering kinetic energy equivalent to a small tactical nuke, around 11.5 to 44 tons of TNT, without radioactive fallout. The U.S. Air Force didn't formally adopt Project Thor as a named program in the 80s, but it did study kinetic bombardment. One offshoot was Brilliant Pebbles, which proposed orbiting projectiles smaller than Thor's rods to intercept missiles, showing the era's appetite for space weapons. Thor-like ideas floated in think tanks and military circles, with Pournelle briefing policymakers, so that is a bit strange. A 2003 U.S. Air Force transformation flight plan revisited the idea, listing hypervelocity rod bundles as a future capability. Official denials of Thor's progress clash with its repeated study. While we have no real proof, the military has studied the weapon, but secrecy shrouds it. I believe that the rods of God, or some sort of direct energy weapon, was used on the Georgia Guidestones. We never heard much about that one, and that was coincidentally one of the 34 sites that you speak of. That video will also be linked. None of the other 34 sites have suffered similar destruction, but sometimes things aren't meant to be taken so literally. Perhaps the rods of God were more metaphorical, implying that there would be some sort of damage, whether physically or to its reputation. So let's look at the alleged 34 satanic sites. I don't think that I've ever seen a list of all 34 of the sites, but the lists have apparently varied in both locations and in number. There have been 15 sites that have been consistent, so let's look at them and see if any type of damage might have occurred to them. The Getty Mansion or Museum was on the list. The Getty Villa at Pacific Palisades sustained damage in the recent Los Angeles fires. Getty Center in Brentwood has been under evacuation orders since January 10, 2025, due to the same fire's eastward push. The 2017 Skirball fire also closed the center briefly. Does this count? Next, the Playboy Mansion has had no physical damage, but after his death, Hefner's reputation was trashed with allegations of rape and drugging. Denver Airport is on the list and has not suffered damage. The White House has been inundated with accusations of wrongdoing and tunnels. There have even been unusual sightings of what appeared to be gunfire inside, and private fences were put up around the grounds on numerous occasions during the first 2 years of Biden's presidency. The Vatican has suffered a lot of damage, including a major financial scandal at the Vatican Bank over mismanagement and fraud tied to a €350 million property deal. Cardinal Angelo Becciu, a top Vatican official, along with 9 others, including brokers, bankers, and clergy, were charged with extortion, embezzlement, and money laundering. The trial resulted in various jail sentences. €166 million were allegedly seized by Vatican authorities as part of the penalties, and €40 million in fines were imposed. Numerous raids occurred between 2019 and 2020, but the official narrative were for evidence, documents, and devices, not to remove tangible assets. Coincidentally, claims about plane loads of gold being removed from Vatican City surfaced around September 2020 during this period. Before its news on September 24, 2020 alleged an international military force flew out 650 plane loads of gold to the U.S. Treasury. Charlie Ward also pushed the story, who is supposed to be deeply involved with Nasara Gassara. Buckingham Palace has also taken a huge reputation hit between Prince Andrew with Epstein and Harry and Meghan giving up their titles. Then there was Epstein Island, which suffered alleged hurricane damage to the dome, and Victoria's Secret's house, which is assumed to be the townhome that Lex Wexner gave to Epstein. So there's big scandal or damage to the reputation of those locations. London Bridge suffered a terrorist attack in 2017 where 8 were killed and 48 were injured. The Pfizer building in New York City was also on the list, and while no physical damage, Pfizer's reputation has been damaged severely as a result of the COVID vaccine backlash. Another location was CERN, and while people fear CERN and what they are doing, nothing has surfaced yet to cause damage to CERN. Stonehenge was vandalized in 2024. Flood mismanagement claims and quake risks have damaged Three Gorges Dam, and X calls it a ticking bomb. The dam reached near capacity after flooding in October 2020 and July 2024, but the official stance from the corporation that operates it is that there is no structural damage. My understanding was that it was biowarfare being conducted under there. Amazing how a story is so different as it gets passed along. So most of the sites predicted have come under some sort of scrutiny. As with many other things, did early truthers exaggerate or receive exaggerated report? Q drop number 154 in November 2017 referenced the Vatican, Rothschilds, and Soros as power hubs. And drop number 916 in March 2018 tied Epstein's Island to trafficking. Q did not post a comprehensive list of 34 locations thought. The 34 satanic sites idea seems to stem from later QAnon followers, not Q itself. I know that the Three Gorges Dam going down is supposed to be one of the last markers that will occur, but markers for what? Medbeds? Nasara? We're still watching. I have wondered, much like you I'm sure, if Q and all the intel that we heard was BS, but I just can't come to that. I believe it's very real. However, I think people took QAnon posts as gold and took things way off track. Also, things change. I think that the people with the alleged military intel didn't have a clue that the Medbeds were of extraterrestrial origin and what working with such entities would entail. They were likely military people without Earth Alliance clearance. I also think a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon to grow a media channel quickly. I can tell you from personal experience that nothing brings views like a video about Medbeds. But these people have cried wolf so many times that they have created credibility concerns. But people still listen to them with undying hope. It makes me sad, and I wish I could say that Medbeds will be all over the world on March 15th, but there was just no evidence to support it. I guess someone was out there promising appointments on that date. Personally, I believe things are going to go much slower than we were originally led to believe. I also think that Trump allegedly losing 2020 was necessary for some reason. We've always heard that a threshold of around 80% had to be awake. But what the heck does that mean? Does it mean that they know that the government has been under deep state control for decades? Does it mean that they also have to wake up to all of the industrial complexes and how the world works? Does it mean that 80% have to evolve to 5D? Does it mean that we have to become awake to extraterrestrial interactions with us? It's an interesting notion, and none of the truthers ever questioned any of this. We are both in pretty good shape mentally, but there are a lot of elderly people that simply have lost the mental capacity. Then there are the ones that rely so much on their children for guidance, who might be the 50% of liberals that just can't allow themselves to be open to anything that might come as a result of Trump. So we really don't have a lot other than some nebulous markers that may or may not have already occurred. We know it's close, but close is a very relative term. For this reason, I often look at other markers for guidance. Recently, I did a video that included the Hopi prophecy about the man in the red hat and his two sidekicks, which has brought up another thought. I did a little more research, and it's not clear whether the true white brother who brings peace is the man in the red hat, also known as Trump. Traditionally, the true white brother wears the red cap, suggesting he's the central figure with two helpers. But some modern takes, like Charisma News in 2024, split them, saying that a man in the red hat heralds the white brother. It wouldn't surprise me if this new interpretation was a deep state tactic because the prophecy was being talked about, and they can't have people think that Trump is the true white brother who brings peace and prosperity. So I'm going to stick with the traditional understanding that the man in the red hat and the true white brother are the same person for now. Hopi prophecy doesn't pin a calendar date. Time is tied to signs, not years. Elders say Pahana arrives after the third great shaking, which is a spiritual or physical upheaval, and when humanity hits a crossroads of choosing purification or destruction. 9 signs precede the day of purification, and most are arguably fulfilled, placing us near the endgame. Let's take a look at a couple of these signs, and maybe you can think of instances of their fulfillment. The first sign is white men taking land, which is likely colonization of the U.S. in the 1500s. The next sign is wagons with voices, which has been interpreted as trains. Long-horned cattle could be the onset of cattle farming in the 1800s. Next, there were iron snakes. Is that the railroads? The next has many possibilities. Sky cobwebs could be power lines, chemtrails, or webs of satellite or Wi-Fi connections. Oil spills have been experienced since the 20th century. Hippies, that was the 60s. Next, a gourd of ashes falling could be atomic bombs of 1945, or it could be 9/11. Lastly, the Blue Star Kachina unmasks. Some say this is a celestial event or UFO. Well, that happened last December with numerous UFO sightings that the mainstream tried to convince us were drones. So even without the destruction of the 34 sites, we appear to have passed all of the markers for the Hopi prophecy. So while the Hopi elders never set a clock, they told us that it's soon when chaos peaks and the Blue Star Kachina dances unmasked. I'd say that we are very close, but close to what? What the Hopi prophecy tells us is that the earth will bloom again, free of evil. There will be no war, no greed, and humanity lives in harmony with nature, guided by the Great Spirit's laws. The purified ones will plant with their hands. Another puzzle. Is this to be taken literal, meaning we should return to the soil, or do we plant the seeds of health with our hands as in energy healers? I wish that I could give you all the answers, but I'm not sure that anybody can. What I can tell you is that the prophecy hinges on human choice. If enough people, led by the true white brother, hold to the true path of peace and harmony, the worst destruction could be avoided, ushering in the fifth world. If not, the purification could be total with no shelter for evil, as only the pure-hearted survive. And so my best advice is to begin to think 5D, both dimensionally and in spiritual density. In closing, I'm going to share the entirety of Q post number 154 for you to think about. Notably, it was posted on November 15, 2017 at 12:34 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, for those that follow those things. The post in its entirety follows as written, except that I have translated some abbreviations for your convenience. Here we go.
How do you capture a very dangerous animal? Do you attack it from the front? Do you walk through the front door? Do you signal ahead of time you're going to attack? Do you show your hand? Who do you send in first? How do you disable? How do you win? Who worships Satan? What family has the most to lose? What family has controlled the Democratic Party for decades? What family was involved with slavery? What family was involved with starting wars? What family currently controls the Democratic Party? What family assets were frozen by executive order? What family was forced to sell assets? What family has a private island? What family has the Clinton Foundation? What family has massive legal issues? What family is under multiple investigations? What family screams the loudest? What family will fall first? Follow the money. Follow the family. Who has it all? Who can you trust? How do you expose evil? How do you awaken the mass population? 4 a.m. How do you safeguard elections? How do you prevent fraud? Why do they push so hard against voter ID? Who really controls North Korea? Who really controls Saudi Arabia? Who really controls Iran? Who really controls the Vatican, Rothschilds, and Soros? Distraction? Focus. United we stand.